to say that this hangout on there is live. I'm live. Okay. So, just published a blog post on my journey of learning this Elm programming language so I could get into the web space. And so, the blog post, if I can go there, is basically building a user control and embedding that user control within the parent control. So, what does that really mean? Oh, if I could share my screen. Come here. Let me share my screen. If I could share my screen, then I basically just published this Elm implementing a user control. All right. And that basically talks about how I'm taking this login control that has a username, a password, and a login button, and I want it to be self-contained, right? Meaning that I want it to be able to operate on its own and yet still have the capability to plug that control in to another interface, right? An interface that can contain that control. And so that's the thought process. And I think that is something that is common. I used to do it all the time in WPF. There is some ceremony with WPF, and there's a little bit of ceremony with this, but I think it's clean. And so, with that said, anyway, this is my blog post, and I talk about building the login control. And I have code for that, and then I talk about embedding the user control, and I have code for that, which is basically the parent and how the parent actually contains this login control or embeds this login control. And then I talk about what needs to be done in regards to the model of this parent control, the the message or messages that this parent control needs to account for. In this case, there's a specific message that needs to reference the message type within its containing control. And also what we need to do for the update function within our parent control that ultimately invokes the update function of our child control, hence the login control. And so I'm going to plant this video that I'm doing right here that I'm streaming live. I'm going to embed that right in this blog post as soon as I get done. All right. So as I'm still sharing my screen, this is the shoot, what just happened? This is the module, or let me start over. This is the sample application that I've been working on. And again, the intent or the purpose of this is to document my understanding of how to do web development using the Elm programming language. All right, and that's the only reason I'm going above and beyond trying to document all this stuff, because yo, I got a big head and I have a big brain. So like there's a lot of stuff that I know, and it's a lot of the stuff leaks out. So it's important for me to build up my own uh I guess records, something I could refer back to so that I can jog my memory and oh okay, I got it. So anyway, this this little project is called Nikeza, and it's basically dealing with um basically taking fragmented artifacts from a publisher and basically streamlining that into a website. So this is an interesting project. But this right here, this username, password, sign in, like this is the actual control. This is the login control that is self-contained, that has been embedded within this web page. All right. And so we can basically say like test, password test, and welcome test, and then the ability to sign out, right? And then we sign out and the UI updates. Cool. All right. So that is the little demo of of the user control that's embedded within a web page. All right. This was important for me to learn. And in my blog post, I have the code for it. And this is the code. This is the login control, right? So I have this domain.login, which, maybe domain is not the right word. Maybe I need to create a separate folder called user controls and then this login module. And I think I'm probably going to do that next. But anyway, it follows the same pattern, right? This model view update. So here's our model right here, username, password, and then the state is, are we logged in or not? Which yes or true or false, right? And then we have our update function, right? Well, we have our update section. Our update function is right here, which takes, of course, your message in your model. But the message is of type message, right? This argument message right here is actually of this type up here, message, in which we have a user input, which is of a string. We have a password input, which is of a string. And we have an attempt, which basically requires or passes the payload of our user input and our password. And so we can see how that attempt is used, or actually all these messages are used basically down here in our view function, right? And here's our submit button, here's our password box, here's our text box, okay? They're of type input, right? And so on our submit button, on click, we basically send this attempt message in, and we pass in the payload of our username and password, right? And I'm not sure if it's worth me talking about the other parts, but on our text on input, well, we pass the password input and we attach the value to the password property of our model. And the same thing over here, right? On the input of our username, we take the value that is typed in that edit box and we assign it to our username property of our model, okay? Now, with that said, you notice that this attempt, this password input, this user input, these are all messages, right? They can all be found right here for our login modules message type. Yeah. All right. So I talked about the login module. It follows the normal pattern, right? There's nothing that is like unorthodox about this. The code is very standard. All right. No ceremony being done here. All right. Now for our parent that is going to contain this login control, right? Our web page that contains this login control or embeds this login control, there's a little bit of ceremony. So as I attempt to explain in my blog post, the first thing that we need to pay attention to is the fact that within our model of our home module, not only do we have our normal properties that are going to be associated to this module, right? That's part of our model, but we're actually referencing the model in our user control that we contain, right? So our login user control, we're actually going to create a property that is going to reflect that user controls model, okay? So that's within our model right here of our parent control. In this case, we have a property called login that is actually of type login.model. That is, again, our user controls model, okay? And if I could scroll up a little bit, is basically referencing this right here, in which it's username, password, logged in, all right? So that's the first thing that we need to account for that I've learned when building a user control and plugging it into a parent. Now, in addition to the model part, we also have our update section, okay? Now, this is where things are pretty interesting, all right? My understanding is we create a message that is associated to our user control events, all right? So we create one message that is associated to the various events that our user control will provide. All right, I hope I said that right, because that's the way I understand it. So what does that really mean? In this case, we go ahead and we declare a case value called login. And the parameter of that case value, login, is going to be of type login.message, okay? Now we can call this case value anything we want. We could call it XYZ, you know, shoot, of course I messed that up. We could call it XYZ, right? Maybe that isn't really helpful for whoever's viewing this. We could call this, you know, on login. How about that? Okay. We call it whatever we want. However, the data that we're attaching to this message is still going to be of type login.message, and that login.message really means that within our login module, which is over here, our login module right here, we are actually referencing this message type right here, okay? So that's what we're doing. In our parent control, we're basically saying, hey, we're going to declare a message. We're going to call it on login. And this is actually going to, we're actually going to handle the messages of our containing control, right? I still butchered the way I said that. We're actually going to handle the messages from our embedded control, all right? Hence, the message type of our embedded control called login. All right, I think that sounds a little bit better. Now, the way that we use this on login message, which if I do a control F2, shoot, I'm butchering everything now. Hold on, I'll go back. I do a control F2, I should just, shoot, keep going back. Okay, login, if I do control F2, I should be able to rename it. I don't know, that is a bug. All right, you know what? On login. Why am I getting to, whatever, hold up. Oh, because it's not smart enough to recognize. Hell's bells. All right, escape out of that, okay? This is a bug because it's not paying attention to the actual type. It's only paying attention to the word within the editor. And that's unfortunate. So I can't rename all occurrences because it only does occurrences of the word and not of the actual type, whatever. So on login to make that more clear, and then update my update function to on login. And where else am I missing it? Articles, that should be fine. Yeah, okay. It'd be fine. It says that there's still some format issues, and that's because this editor is not fully baked and it's detracting from my original intent. Now I have to go out my way and do this retarded. Really? Where's that to update you at? All right. This should be the last update. No. On login. That should be it. All right. That should be it. Really? Everywhere? That should be it. And this is really retarded the way I'm doing this. That should be it. And all right. So, and now everything's screwed up. Hopefully this is the last update I have to make. And what is this complaining about? First argument, first argument. All right, so all else fails. If that doesn't get resolved, let me control F5. It's still complaining about the error, which shouldn't have anything to do with what I was working on. Login, login. If I attempt to kill this and then attempt to bring it back, will it give me a more helpful compile message? And it probably won't. And if I do that, oh, well, I don't see any red squigglies. Hold up. Now it's saying that first argument A is causing a mismatch. Well, why are you causing it? Are you sure? If I go to 90, this is completely destroying my original intent. And I know it has nothing to do with this right here. I know it has nothing to do with this. So if I just comment that out, it's probably going to complain about something else. Control F5. And it does have something to do with this. All right, so anyway, before I got sidetracked, I went ahead and renamed the login case value to on login because I didn't want to confuse whoever is reading this with the actual login module. So maybe it was better that they have different names. And the last thing that I need to talk about is the view function. So the view function basically takes our model and feeds it into a function called session UI. The session UI is actually responsible for taking the model that we have and building and rendering a view, right? And so here, you know, I declare a value called logged in so I could get the state of the login value, which is from our login module, right? And from there, I basically ask a question saying, hey, if I'm not logged in, then go ahead and render those controls that I showed earlier. You remember these controls right here? Go ahead and show that right there. All right. So, however, the main point that I want to drive within the view function, I understand this says session UI, but session UI is invoked from our view function, is that in order to make all this work, I have learned, or my understanding, is that we need to leverage this HTML.map function. This map function is actually going to take the case value of our message discriminated union. In this case, it's going to take our on login message. And with that message on login that it's referencing, it's actually going to push the events from our login. how am I going to say this? It's actually going to push the events that result from our login module's view function, and it's going to attach those messages from our view function of our login module and attach them as payloads to our onLogin message in our parent module. Oh God, I know what I'm saying. I just know I'm struggling to articulate it, but this is helping me get a better understanding. So let me try to say this one more time. All right. I'll discuss all the alterations that we need to make in our parent module that contains our user control. And what I wanted to say is within our view function, we ultimately want to leverage the HTML.map function, in which we take the message that we declared within our message type on our parent control. In this case, we call it onLogin. That's what we already declared in our message discriminated union up here, right? onLogin. Within this message discriminated union, what we're doing is we are saying that, hey, I want you to map the messages within our login view function, all the messages that get spun up, I want you to map that to our onLogin message up here, meaning that the data that is attached to our onLogin message, remember, if we go to our onLogin message, it has a parameter called submessage. We're going to attach the messages from our embedded control, and we're going to put it in here. And then from there, we can, within our update function of our parent control, we can call we could call our user controls update function and pass that message to its update function. That's the best way I can articulate it right now. I know I still struggled, but I'll do better the next time I try to articulate this at an interview. Anyway, I'm pretty disappointed in my dissertation, but whatever. All right, let me stop sharing my screen, and that's it. So I'm attaching this video to the blog post that I recently published, and this kind of like internalizes my understanding of it, even though I think I did a poor job trying to articulate that to anybody viewing this. But so what? This is for me anyway. All right, and this video is probably also going to be referenced in the Lambda Cartel GitHub page. So I'll probably throw this video in there as well, along with a reference to the blog post. Now I'm out. All right, I'm Scott Nimrod, aka Bizmonger. I do desktop application development. I do mobile application development. And I am trying really hard to learn as much as I can about this Elm programming language so I can establish myself as the technical authority in the state of Florida, so I could be your go-to man. And that's it. So I'm out. Adios. Te veo a ratito. I'm hitting the stop broadcast button right now.